Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
I just saw my first case of trench mouth. I didn't even know what it was, but neither did the ER doctor who saw my patient before me. Let me back up. I have a 17-year-old patient who she recently had COVID, and the same day or maybe the second day of her COVID symptoms, she started to have severe mouth pain. So she went to the ER because of it, and they diagnosed her with HSV, herpes, like the cold sore virus. So the doctor gave her Valtrex, and it actually didn't help at all. Then I saw her in clinic in follow-up, and the first thing I noticed was that her breath was like quite foul, and I've been in some pretty gross mouths to compare it to. So the way the inside of her mouth looked didn't look anything like the kids I've seen who get HSV, which is actually pretty common. The first time a kid gets the HSV virus in their mouth, that's the one that causes cold sores, they pretty much always have a pretty high fever and blisters inside their mouth and bleeding gums. So this girl also had bleeding gums, so I can see why the ER doctor thought it was HSV. Anyway, the inside of her mouth looked more like it was peeling off or ulcerating, not like blisters like you see with HSV. So I went down this long rabbit hole, as you can imagine. I thought it could be a symptom of COVID. And of course, if you do an internet search, there is literally a report of every single symptom that is in existence, and it's been reported to be associated with COVID. So that was not helpful at all. Other times when I've seen really painful mouth sores, it was from an autoimmune disease or another rare virus. So I tested for all of those. Plus, I scraped it and tested for HSV, and everything came back completely normal. Then she goes to see a periodontist. That's a fancy dentist. And he diagnosed her with acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, which is also called trench mouth. So it's like just really bad gingivitis. And the doctor recommended to treat with approximately a $2,000 gentle cleaning of her teeth that was going to take place over a few sessions. So the mom comes back to me, and I don't even know what to say. It sounds kind of far-fetched, and the treatment is cleaning. I would have thought that if it's this horrible sounding thing, acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, that it would have come on more gradually. So it still seemed like it could be a virus. And it started suddenly, like by a particular trigger, but what do I know? So fast forward. I dig deep into what's known about ANUG. I don't even know how to say that. Anyway, that's what she has. And everything does seem to fit. Her symptoms, the timing, and I was thinking maybe the stress of COVID was that trigger. The only thing that doesn't fit is that it's really, really rare now. And most people who have trench mouth, it's easier to say than acute necrotizing, blah, blah, blah. They have it because they have an immune problem or HIV. Then I found out that she vapes like a lot. And that is probably the perfect storm that set her up for trench mouth. Vaping causes a really dry mouth, and that can disrupt the bacterial balance inside the mouth. And nicotine constricts blood flow in the gums, and that blocks healing. Plus, those chemical irritants that are in vape liquids, they can inflame gum tissue too. So it makes a perfect environment for infection. I could not believe that she was vaping so much that she caused an infection of the inside of her mouth to slough off. She was in so much pain. I felt so bad for her because she was in so much pain and her mouth looked so bad, but also stop vaping. But she couldn't. And she is still vaping even now. Remember, she's 17 years old. Why is she still vaping when her mouth is like falling off? The answer lies in the story of nicotine. It turns out this is a big and hidden issue for our kids. It's literally hidden. I mean, I hear about all the vaping in the bathroom. It's in the bathroom at our middle school. It's crazy. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. I'm that doctor friend you call for practical advice about your kids' health. I mix the science of medicine with the reality of parenting. Basically, nobody smokes cigarettes anymore, and far fewer young people are picking up the habit, which is a huge problem if you're a tobacco company. That means it's time to design a new product. And some brilliant minds came up with Zyn. Do you know what that is? I sort of did. I thought I heard it was a pillow. I didn't know what that was. What I didn't know is how many Zyn that kids are using at a time. It's shocking. And I didn't know that I should care, but it turns out nicotine is a really big deal for kids. We have to keep kids away from it, and I'm going to explain why. But first, what is Zyn? Here's Bonnie Halpern-Felsher. She's a professor of pediatrics in the Division of Adolescent Medicine at Stanford University, and she studies teen and young adult substance abuse. Here, she's going to explain the concerns about Zyn.
So Zyn are little white pouches about that big, and you put them between your gum and your lip or your cheek and your lip area. Could be bottom or top. Most young people seem to be using it up top. They are nicotine. Supposedly the tobacco is taken out. It's just the nicotine, but we're worried about other ingredients that might be in there. They're not well studied yet. We still don't know a lot about the ingredients, the chemicals, the pharmacological aspects of them. But what we do know is that young people are using. A lot of young people are initiating nicotine use through pouches, meaning they're not going, let me use cigarettes. Oh, let me switch to something else. They're starting with these nicotine pouches, Zyn. We're seeing some teens are using 1 to 3, 4, 5 pillows, these pouches at a time. And the concern is that they're either 3 milligram or 6 milligrams of nicotine. So you're looking at potentially using a half a pack or a pack of cigarettes in 1 or 2 sittings if you're using multiple pouches at a time.
Dr. Halpern-Felsher notes that there isn't tobacco in these, it's just nicotine, and we don't know what else is in it. Doesn't that seem safer than smoking? Well, it's not. It's not for the developing brain and body. This is the information you need to know so you can talk to your kids with conviction about not using nicotine. It's not benign. I think for some of us, it's easy to turn a blind eye and be glad our kids aren't doing something worse. But here's the thing. Nicotine is one of the most addictive substances out there. And when teenagers start using it, their brains are actually wired to be addicted.
Adolescents' brains and young adults' brains, our brains continue to develop until about age 25. The problem is, as our brains are developing, we're born with the ability to become addicted to nicotine in a lot of ways. As our brain's changing, we're getting rid of, we're pruning away the parts of the brain that aren't working for us, we don't need anymore. So that includes nicotine receptors. We would prune those away. But if we add our nicotine to our bodies during our adolescence and into our young adult time, those receptors say, I'm going to stay. And maybe I'm going to have more, and I'm going to want more nicotine. And if you don't give me nicotine and I'm used to nicotine, I'm going to be going through a withdrawal because I'm now addicted or dependent on that nicotine. So I might go through a withdrawal and feel pretty sick. So what happens is during this time, nicotine actually changes the brain chemistry of an adolescent young adult. It's why the tobacco industry targets young people. If you look at all the ads and the marketing, because they know if we can get a young person and a young person addicted, we can have them addicted for life.
So let's start with the brain. Adolescence is a critical period for brain development, and nicotine interferes with that process in ways that can last a lifetime. It affects the areas that are responsible for attention, memory, and impulse control, and kids need their impulse control. So it makes it harder for teens to concentrate and learn if they don't have these processes in place. That's because nicotine hijacks the brain's natural reward system and changes the way neurotransmitters like dopamine actually work. And over time, the brain adapts to these artificial spikes in dopamine, makes it harder for teens to feel pleasure from everyday activities, And this not only increases their risk of addiction, but it makes them also more vulnerable to anxiety and depression. I had another 14-year-old patient, and she had really bad anxiety. She had been seeing a therapist, and she and I were talking about starting her on an anti-anxiety medication. And that's when I learned that she was using Zyn. She started using nicotine because she thought it helped her manage stress. But what she was experiencing was that her anxiety was just getting worse and worse and worse. But she didn't want to tell me. She couldn't stop using it because she was having withdrawal. Nicotine creates a cycle of dependence. And when the effects wear off, withdrawal kicks in, making teens really irritable, anxious, and more stressed than before. So keep an eye for this. There's a strong link between nicotine and higher rates of anxiety and depression in adolescents. This is known. The other problem is that when a teen's brain is used to having nicotine, they're also more likely to use other substances. And it's true, including alcohol and other drugs, because their brain is wired to seek out those same dopamine-driven rewards. My 14-year-old patient, she started using THC in a vape pen in an attempt to calm down. And then another patient I have, same age, 14, became addicted to video games. He would stay up all night. He was just looking for a dopamine hit inside his brain, and it worked, except he didn't get any sleep, and that was a total mess. Then there's the physical impact of nicotine, which is probably well known to you. Nicotine raises your heart rate, and it raises your blood pressure, and it increases your risk of cardiovascular problems when you're older. It affects your lungs, we all know that, especially when you're inhaling through vaping, which has its own set of dangers. Vape liquids contain really harmful chemicals that can inflame and damage lung tissue. Some teens even develop a condition called EVALI, which is a serious lung illness linked to vaping. I have 2 high school football players in my practice who had to quit their football team because of chronic lung problems from vaping. And let's not forget, nicotine weakens the immune system, makes teens more susceptible to infections. Up next, I'm going to talk about why this is such a problem and what we can do to help our kids.
The Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University helps you go from, I know the way, to I've arrived with our top 10 ranked online MBA. Gain skills you can learn today and apply tomorrow. Get ready to go from make it happen to made it happen and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu/Jack Welch MBA to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
One of the biggest challenges we face in talking to kids is that they think vaping and Zyn are a safer alternative to smoking. And that's what the tobacco companies want them to think. But it's a dangerous misconception that we need to be sure to educate kids about. Vaping has concentrated nicotine that goes straight to the brain, and it's often at higher levels than cigarettes. Here's Dr. Halpern.
The nicotine levels in e-cigarettes has gone up dramatically, starting around 2015 when Juul came out. Before that, we had around 0 to 36 milligrams of nicotine per e-cigarette product. Now we've got in the tens to hundreds, depending on the product. The point is that a pack of cigarettes, each cigarette has about 8 milligrams of nicotine. What you inhale is about 1 to 1.5 milligrams of nicotine. If you inhale or smoke an entire pack of cigarettes, it's 20, 25 milligrams of nicotine. Most e-cigarettes today have double that, if not more. So I think it's important to realize that when we're talking about electronic cigarettes, huge amount of nicotine, huge amount of health harms, definitely effects on the heart and lungs. We're seeing people with lung collapses, with other lung lesions, with lung issues. We're seeing heart issues right now, and not just adults, with young people as well. Part of it's the nicotine, part of it's the inhaling, part of it's some of the other chemicals that are in there and the flavors themselves. But I think that the amount of nicotine often gets overlooked. And we really, in the US, we have no maximum nicotine level. We do in other countries, but right now, there's no nicotine standard. E-cigarettes, Zyn can have as much nicotine as they want. And companies are taking advantage of that, and really on the backs of young people who are suffering and becoming addicted.
As she explains, vaping also exposes teens to toxic chemicals, some of which can cause permanent lung damage. And vaping liquids taste sweet and they don't smell like cigarettes. So it's easier for teens to use them often without realizing how much nicotine they're actually consuming. All right, how do you talk to your kids about this? If your teen is already using nicotine, whether vaping or smoking traditional cigarettes, it's important to talk to them now and just know that the earlier they stop, the better chance they have of protecting their brain and their body in the long run. If you're a parent, you might be feeling frustrated or helpless, especially if your child is already starting to use nicotine, but they often will take cues from you, even if they act like they're not listening. So it's worth a try to talk to your kids. Okay, let's talk about prevention. One of the most powerful tools you have is just conversation. Kids are more likely to make good choices when they feel like they understand why something is harmful, rather than just you telling them not to do it. So instead of just a one-time lecture, don't smoke, try weaving these discussions into everyday moments. So if you see a vape shop or a commercial or a news story comes on about vaping, that's a good time to talk to them. Ask them what they know about it. That's a great trick. Ask them, what do you know about this? Ask them what their friends think. And then ask them what they've seen at school. Then, now that you're an expert and you've heard all of this, you can explain how nicotine changes the way their brain works, making them more anxious and irritable, or how vaping causes dry mouth and inflamed gums, and you can tell them all about my patient and her disgusting mouth. Most kids don't think about their long-term health risks, but they do care about their skin and they care about their breath, and their ability to focus in school or sports might be important to them. So maybe emphasize the bad breath part. Another strategy is to help kids build their refusal skills. And this is great for any time throughout their life. Teens may try nicotine products not because they're desperate to use them, but because they're in a social situation and it just feels easier to say yes than to be the only one in the room saying no. So help your child practice responses that they can use without being embarrassed. Like have your child say something like, "No, that stuff makes me sick," or, "Oh, I can't, my coach will kill me." So the more comfortable they feel saying no and having a reason, the more likely they are to stand by their decision when the moment comes up. If your teen is already using nicotine, quitting can be really hard. So just remember that, but it's possible. The first thing to do is understand why they're using it in the first place. Are they stressed? Are they anxious? Are they bored? Are they depressed? Are they trying to fit in? Some kids get addicted because they thought they were just experimenting, while others use nicotine to help manage anxiety or school pressure. If your child is using nicotine to cope with stress, talk to them about other alternatives. What could they try that might help them, like exercise or breathing or playing music? When it comes to quitting, remember as a parent, when you provide support, that beats providing shame every time. Don't punish them. Let them know you understand nicotine is addictive and that quitting is hard, but you're there to help. Make a plan together, whether that's gradually cutting back or maybe getting nicotine replacement options under a doctor's guidance, or you may need to find professional help. Some kids do really well with quit apps. They track your progress and send motivational messages. Other kids need a more structured plan, like talking to their doctor or strategies to handle cravings. And the last thing is, you need to set a good example and create a home environment that discourages nicotine. If you or other adults in the house use nicotine, try quitting alongside your teen. It shows them that quitting is possible and that you're in it together. If their social group is full of kids who vape, encourage them to do activities that get them involved with peers who don't vape, whether it's sport or volunteer work or hobbies that keep them engaged and away from these environments. At the end of the day, when you help your kids avoid or quit nicotine, you're giving them the knowledge, the confidence, and the support they need to make lots of healthy choices. And the earlier you start these conversations, the more involved you are, the better their chances of staying nicotine-free. For more from the Pediatrician Next Door, find me on the web at pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com. If you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email to hello@pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com for a chance to hear your voice on the show. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the Pediatrician Next Door. This show is produced by Red Rock Music. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever it is you're listening. I'll be back next time with more.